Michael's recklessness is about to spiral out of control, and the children's fate hangs by a thread. But before we dive in, if you've missed part 1, pause here and go watch it first, because every mistake, every choice has led to this chilling moment. And to all my returning viewers, thank you for your amazing support. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe, because from here on, this story only gets darker. The cracks in their marriage had grown into canyons. Michael barely came home. When he did, his temper filled the flat like smoke. Grace clung to hope, attending every parenting class, every support group, clinging to the thought that maybe, just maybe, the judge would see her effort. But Michael's recklessness was poison. He missed appointments. He argued with social workers. And once, during a heated meeting, he shouted so loudly that the baby in the next room began to cry. It was written in the report. Every word, every failure. The system was watching. And it never missed a detail. By now the whole estate knew. Children taken, parents fighting to get them back. Whispers turned into stares. When Grace walked to the shop, she felt the weight of 100 eyes on her back. Pity from some, judgment from others. Michael didn't care. He wore their whispers like a badge. "The system's against us," he muttered. "They don't want people like us to succeed." But Grace knew it wasn't that simple. The truth was harder, sharper. The system wasn't against them. Michael was against himself. One grey afternoon, Grace sat across from Ms. Reynolds, the social worker assigned to their case. Her voice was steady, but her words were cold steel. "Grace, we've given you both chances. You've made progress. But Michael," she paused, flipping through a thick folder of reports, "he is putting everything at risk. If things don't change, we will recommend permanent placement for your children. Do you understand what that means?" Grace nodded, but her chest felt hollow. Permanent. The word echoed like a death sentence. And when she returned home that night, Michael was drunk, sprawled across the sofa. Grace stood in the doorway, tears stinging her eyes. She realized then, she wasn't just fighting the system. She was fighting the man she had chosen to build her life with. Michael grew bolder. One evening he whispered his plan again. "We can take them back. During the next visit, I'll grab Daniel first, then the others. We'll leave London before they notice." His voice shook with desperation. His eyes burned with madness. Grace's stomach twisted. It was reckless. Suicidal. "They'll arrest us," she pleaded. "We'll lose them forever." But Michael's silence was terrifying, because silence meant he wasn't listening. Silence meant he had already decided. The next visit began as usual. A small, plain room, a clock ticking. The children shy, hesitant, still adjusting to these fractured reunions. Grace tried to smile, tried to play, but her eyes flicked constantly to Michael. Every move he made, every twitch of his hands. And then it happened. He leaned too close to Daniel, his hand brushing the boy's arm, his voice a low whisper. The social worker caught it. Her pen scribbled furiously across the page. Grace's heart stopped. She knew what that meant. Michael had just signed the final nail in their coffin. The children's fate was no longer tilting. It was falling. 2 weeks after that disastrous visit, Grace's phone rang. The number was official, cold. "Mrs. Adeyemi," the voice said. "This is Children's Services. We need to inform you.
The next hearing will not be about temporary custody. It will address permanent placement. Grace's blood ran cold. Her knees buckled. Permanent. The word returned, sharper than ever. When she told Michael, he exploded. "They can't do this to us. I'll tell the judge the truth. I'll tell them they set us up." But Grace only stared at him, tears streaming down her face. Because deep down, she knew the truth. The system didn't set them up. Michael had done that himself. The days before the hearing were a blur. Grace barely ate, she barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the children's faces. Daniel's wide, questioning stare. Miriam's trembling lip. Baby Joel's tiny hand reaching for her. She practiced speeches in the mirror. "Please, give me another chance. I've changed. I can do better." But each time her voice cracked, because what if they didn't believe her? What if the decision was already made?
And what if Michael ruined everything again? The day arrived. A grey sky. Rain streaking the courthouse windows. Inside, the air was thick with silence. Grace sat trembling, her lawyer whispering instructions. Michael sat beside her, jaw tight, fists clenched. The judge entered. Everyone rose, and then it began. Reports were read aloud. Every late appointment, every argument, every risk. Grace listened as strangers described her family, her marriage, her failures. Each word cut deeper than the last. She wanted to scream, to beg, to fall to her knees. But she stayed silent, because this was no longer about words. This was about power, and she had none. The tension snapped when the social worker read her final notes, the one about Michael whispering to Daniel during the visit. He couldn't hold back. "She's lying," he shouted, slamming the table. "They want to steal our children. They don't care about us. This is a setup." Gasps filled the courtroom. The judge's gavel struck hard. "Mr. Adeyemi, one more outburst and you will be removed." But the damage was done. Grace buried her face in her hands, knowing in that instant the decision was sealed. The judge's voice was steady, final. "After reviewing all reports, testimonies and evidence, this court concludes that the children's welfare cannot be secured under the care of Michael and Grace Adeyemi. Permanent placement will be pursued." Grace's world collapsed. Her cries echoed through the chamber, raw and desperate. Michael's fists pounded the table, security stepping closer. But the children were not there to hear it. They were elsewhere, waiting, perhaps never to return. And as the gavel struck one last time, Grace's voice cracked into the silence. "Please, don't take them from me." But no one answered, because the answer had already been given. The flat was too quiet now. The children's laughter, gone. The little shoes by the door, gone. Even the sound of crying in the night had vanished. Grace walked from room to room like a ghost, her fingers brushing against empty beds, shelves where toys once sat. She whispered their names into the silence. "Daniel, Miriam, Joel." But silence was her only answer. Michael reacted differently. He drowned himself in anger. He stormed through the estate, shouting that the government had stolen his family. At night, he drank until he could barely stand.
The bottles piled up, clinking together like broken promises. Grace tried to reach him, but he was too far gone. His rage became fists, not always against her, but against walls, doors, tables, anything within reach. And for the first time, Grace felt afraid. Not of losing her children, they were already gone, but of losing herself. Every morning, Grace wrote letters, to Daniel, to Miriam, to Joel. She wrote about the weather, about memories, about love. She wrote promises. I will find you again. I will never stop fighting. But the letters were never sent. They sat in a shoebox under her bed, the ink smudged with tears. Because Grace knew the children might never read them. One evening, as rain tapped against the windows, there was a knock at the door. Grace opened it to find Miss Reynolds, the social worker. Her face was unreadable. Grace, she said softly, I shouldn't be here off record. But I need you to know the children are being considered for adoption. A final family may be chosen soon. Grace's chest tightened. Adoption. That word was worse than permanent placement. It meant forever. It meant new parents. It meant her children might one day forget her face. And then Miss Reynolds lowered her voice. There's still a chance, but only if you separate from Michael. The door closed.
The silence pressed in, and Grace stood frozen, her heart pounding like a war drum. That night, Michael stumbled home drunk, furious, ranting about fighting the system. Grace watched him from the kitchen doorway, her hands trembling. The words from Ms. Reynolds echoed in her mind. Only if you separate from Michael. For the first time, Grace considered the unthinkable. Not losing Michael to the system, but choosing to leave him herself. She looked at him, broken, reckless, dangerous. And then she whispered to the empty air, as if confessing to the children she could no longer hold. Maybe it's the only way to save you. Tears streaming, eyes filled with both love and fear. Grace stood at the bus stop, a folded piece of paper in her hand. It was the notice of adoption. The names of the prospective parents were blacked out, but that didn't matter. What mattered was finality. The children were slipping away for good. She thought of Ms. Reynolds' words, only if you separate from Michael. But when she turned back toward their flat, she saw him through the window, drunk again, asleep on the sofa. And in that moment, she realized her choice had come too late. The court granted her one last supervised visit, one last chance to hold them. The room was sterile, a few toys scattered, walls painted pale blue. Daniel entered first, taller now, more withdrawn. Miriam clung to his side. And little Joel didn't even reach for her. He had grown used to arms that were not hers. Grace tried to speak, but words dissolved into sobs. She kissed their hair, held their tiny hands, whispered promises she knew she could never keep. And when the supervisor said time's up, she felt as though her heart was being carved out of her chest. Daniel looked back once, just once, and then he was gone. Michael never made peace. On the night the adoption order was finalized, he stormed into the social services office, shouting, demanding to see his children. Security restrained him. The police were called. And as they dragged him away, his voice echoed through the building. "They're mine. You can't take them. They're mine." It was the last time Grace ever saw him. Soon after, he disappeared from her life completely. Some said he left the country. Others said he drank himself into the streets. Grace never knew. And perhaps she didn't want to. The flat returned to silence. Grace cooked meals she couldn't eat, folded clothes no one would wear, wrote letters that no child would read. Neighbours stopped whispering, stopped staring, because in their eyes, the story was already over. But for Grace, it would never be over. Every corner of that flat whispered their names. Every night echoed with memories. And in the stillness, she whispered into the dark, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." One evening, walking home, she passed a park. And there, under the soft glow of the setting sun, she thought she saw them. 3 children, laughing, running, held by the hands of 2 smiling strangers. Her heart leapt. Her legs froze. She blinked. And just like that, they were gone. Whether it was them or not, she would never know. But she carried that image with her forever. Her children, safe, but no longer hers. And that was the end. My friends, this story has been heavy, and its ending unbearably sad. But it carries lessons that must be spoken. Children are not extensions of our ambitions. They are not bargaining chips in the fight for survival. They are fragile souls who need love, stability, and care above all else. Michael and Grace came to the UK with dreams of a better life, but in their struggle for financial survival, in their battles with each other, they forgot the most important thing, the needs of their children. And when children are neglected, whether by choice or by circumstance, it is always the children who pay the highest price. So let this story remind us all, no matter how hard life gets, no matter how heavy the struggles become, we must put our children first, above money, above pride, above everything. Because once they are gone, once trust is broken, there are no second chances. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think Grace could have done something differently? Or was the system right to step in? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'll be reading every single one. And if this story moved you, don't let it end here. Hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe to this channel so you never miss the next story. Your support means the world. And together, we can keep telling the stories that matter, stories that teach, stories that move, and stories that remind us of life's most important truths. Until next time, take care of your loved ones, and most of all, take care of your children. I remain your storyteller. Thanks for watching.